Shit food.
Shit food. No, we're not doing that
stuff
episode yet.
The stuff that you eat. Stuff that you eat.
But frickin' McDonald's breakfast is premier dining. It's the best thing in the world.
We are not going to go over this again.
Maybe someone in the future. Right.
Yes.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 2 of Mobile Pod, which is actually the third episode, but it's not, because
We can do whatever we want.
we can do whatever we want. Anyway, so something that I've seen a lot in the comments we've received on Mobile Pod, and just in general, people asking me this, is Mecha's a pretty big thing, and some people completely refuse to watch it, some people are baffled by it. And so what we have decided to do today is we're sort of going to go through various things and sort of tell you all why we enjoy Mecha, why we watch Mecha, what the appeal of Mecha is, and generally sort of give people a picture on how to get into it. Like give gateway shows and give a good idea on the benefits of having Mecha in your life. What?
Having it in your life.
Yeah? Oh man, if Mecha wasn't in my life, I think I'd be a very different person.
This sounds like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting.
This is what we should have called our podcast is not Mobile Pod. It should be Mecha Anonymous.
Mechaholics Anonymous.
Mechaholics Anonymous.
It's okay. It's okay.
No, the problem with that is that we are very familiar. Well, everyone's very familiar with who we are, so it's not very anonymous. But I think that the first thing to sort of kick off with this is, what is Mecha? Like, there are some sort of loose descriptions out there, and some sort of, I guess, indecision from certain people as to what actually defines what Mecha is. So what do you actually consider Mecha to be, Sooin?
Mecha anime typically revolves around a group or a single character going through a series of journeys involving specifically a mech or a group of mechanical objects. And together, they go through several arcs and they develop through the course with the assistance of said mech. Now, the definition is extremely loose, as some mech shows do not really follow that rule. However, like most of the shows that I prefer to gravitate towards follow that formula.
Okay. I think for me, very black and white and simple is I kind of define a mecha show by a show where the protagonist pilots a robot and generally fights other robots in the show, as opposed to, say, a show that has mecha in it, but they aren't really like a focal point, I guess. So it's a case of any sort of combat and any kind of action or movement in war will come as at the result of mecha being involved in it. Because there are shows that, as I said, that have mecha in that I wouldn't really consider to be mecha shows. I think there are some shows that sit very close to the fence either side of it. I think a show like Guilty Crown, for example, it has mechs in it, and important characters fight mechs, and mech battles happen throughout it, but they're
But it's not
just
the focal point.
It's not the focal point of the story, even though Guilty Crown is a show that has a lot in common with numerous other mecha shows.
To be fair, Guilty Crown is just like an amalgamation of everything.
Yeah, it is.
It's like action, comedy, somewhat drama, romance, mecha, superpowers.
all that jazz. But yeah, I don't consider Guilty Crown to be a mecha show, really, because the protagonist doesn't use one, and it's not really a key point, like to the point where I don't even remember what the mechs are called in Guilty Crown, and that's usually quite a big deal.
Oh damn, what are they called?
I don't know, rolly wheels. They've got wheels, they've got rollerblades like Nightmare Frames.
Like, the only character who used mech was a wheelchair girl, and the blonde kid who had like a...
Yeah, the blonde enemy guy.
Some kind of mental disorder or something. Like, he killed his own family.
Daryl Yan is what his name is.
There we go.
Daryl.
Dadidu.
Dadidu.
Yes.
And I think the other show that I think is commonly sort of, is it mecha or not, is Gargantia? Because Gargantia, the main character does pilot a mech, but there's only like 2 mechs in the show, because obviously in Gargantia the guy comes from another planet, like another sort of dimension rather, and ends up in this place that doesn't really have them. They are sort of there, they just aren't really important. And also in that is the other thing that people get sort of antsy about, I guess, in sort of defining what mecha is that Chamber is like an intelligent life form. The main mecha in the show is an intelligent life form, and so many people, potentially myself included, don't consider like something like Transformers to be a mecha show.
Well, that could be argued upon. Well, stuff like Evangelion, for example, has some independent thought to it, similar to Chamber, and that's considered a mech. Even though it's some people would argue it's a biomechanical mech in some cases.
I think that the key difference that separates sort of like Ava from like Chamber and Transformers is that I wouldn't consider any of the Avas to be characters. Like they have independent thought, they are, as you say, biomechanical, but I wouldn't consider Ava 1 to be a character.
I don't know. I would consider it special enough to be considered its own character in some way. If you've seen Ava, you'll know what I'm talking about. But would Gundams be considered characters, do you think?
No. But yeah, I think that sort of covers what we really define mecha to be. And just kind of like, which isn't really a big deal. I mean, you can, any of these shows are just like good shows. But I think that leads into our next point, is so many people refuse to watch mecha on the grounds of it being mecha. And I remember a specific comment from one of the episodes we did on here was that like they found it boring that we were discussing just mecha in general, and as opposed to other things. But mecha is probably the most expansive genre.
Broad.
Like it's a very, because it being mecha in general doesn't really have a huge impact on the plot. There are lots and lots of like running themes and tropes within mecha as a genre, and you will find lots of things commonly cropping up among very many shows that are similar to each other. But in essence, a show being a mecha show doesn't define it in any way, I guess, because you can, as with my description of what a mecha show is, that is, you have limitless possibilities beyond that.
Well, I think one of the big turnoffs for a lot of people is when you think of mechs, you automatically think Gundam. And when they think of Gundam, they think of, oh my god,
How
this is
do
all the
I
episodes
Gundam?
have. Yeah. Like, which I can kind of understand, but it's kind of like you're being ignorant, because Gundam, while it is a huge chunk of the genre and responsible for making it very popular, it's also not everything as to what defines the mech genre. There's loads, like there's real robot, there's super robot, and there's something that doesn't necessarily classify as mech, so something like Code Geass or Guilty Crown, where it's like not the sole focus. Like there's a wide array of stuff that I think people are just tending to overlook just because of the word mech is attached to the show.
At the end of the day, mecha is just a subgenre within sci-fi, and you'll find a lot more similarities from like a given mecha show to another sci-fi show than you would between two shows within mecha. Like, for example, Zeta Gundam has a lot more in common with space operas and like Legend of the Galactic Heroes or anything like that than it does, say, something like frickin' Gurren Lagann. And those are both mecha shows, and like many of these space operas and stuff like that aren't mecha shows, but they've got a lot more in common with Zeta. That's a very extreme example, but it sort of shows the lengths between any two specific shows, just how much variation there is in here. So why do you watch Mecha Sooin? Why is it one of your favourite things?
I think one of the big aspects is, other than when you think of mecha, you also think of the political aspect of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
Two factions or several factions are constantly at war. The usual setting you get with a lot of mechs. But I think one of the most unique aspects of mechs is the design. And that's going to sound really pretty much like a cop-out a lot of times.
You are an artist.
Yeah, so I got to pass on that. Like, you get to see these designs go into action. You get to see them fight. You get to see them move. It's like you're watching a human, except designed entirely by humans in a sense. It's like watching your own creation come to life and watching it interact with the environment, and I find that a really cool aspect behind it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it goes down to what you've spoken to me about before, is that you look at design from any field and you think like how new like character designers and just creating anything worlds or whatever is like a tall order, and then you've always said to me how much more complex it is to design mechs
Oh yeah,
to a good degree.
human design and mech design are, while they can be similar in a lot of aspects, like such as like colors and stuff, it's a lot more difficult because you have to keep in mind of, let's say the inner workings of said mech. Like, does it have to be anatomically correct depending on the setting that you're working on, or can it be just blown up to ridiculous amounts, like super robot extent, depending on the environment or depending on what kind of mood that it is. Like, there's like so many different aspects. Because the thing I found with like a lot of anime human designs is they tend to follow a very similar template in the sense that they're very lanky or very slimly built, long legs, long arms. Whereas with mechs, you can get away with short, fat, tall, skinny. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that applies to humans is the rounder they are, usually, you can tell immediately that their side characters are not important.
Yeah, it's as you said, like it's not for me a simple case of how the mech looks itself, it's how it functions, because I've always been someone from when I was a kid who got so much out of just gadgets and technology and that kind of thing in sci-fi. And I'm sure there are lots of people who go loopy over sort of like different ships and size and all that kind of thing and just how these things work. And I think that's something that I really just appreciate about mechs as a concept. It's because it's something that is so sort of striven for and has in robotics and stuff in real life. It's something that is always attempted but has not been mastered to this level yet. It's something that you can only really get in anime to this extent, I suppose. Because, I mean, mentioning Transformers again, like when I was growing up, Transformers was one of my favourite things ever. I still love it, I just don't watch it very much anymore.
Robots in disguise.
In disguise. And so, yeah, just when I think about mecha as a genre and why it is I'm so drawn to it, initially it wasn't a case of like, oh, I love mech because I love robots. Because, I mean, I have always thought giant robots were cool and everything like that. But it just sort of got to the point where so many of these shows that I loved were mecha shows. And it's not because they were mecha shows that I loved them, but they were just all mecha shows, and so many of my favourites have always been from mecha. And so from that point on, I was like, alright, this genre seems to do lots for me for lots of different reasons, and I just kind of latched onto it from there because it's so expansive, and it's got this backbone of just these awesome designs that are so cool and just boggle my mind. Because I don't know if you have this as well, but one of the big things that draws me to sci-fi and anything like that is that anything with like an immense scale to it just blows my mind. Like if I think about like this thing is so huge that it just boggles my mind as to how it exists and how it functions and how it does what it does. Like it's something like one of the biggest reasons that I adore Macross is that the SDF-1 is this amazing blimmin' colony for people to live in that's also like a war machine and robots, and they just make it work, and the detail that goes into how these things function beyond how they look, it's just really, really interesting to me. But even if I wasn't interested in that before I gained that sort of level of interest for those aspects of it, there's just so much to get out of various different mecha shows just for what they are.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I really respect the real robot genre, subgenre in this sense, where so much fucking research has to go into like how, as you said, like the mechs move. Like you've seen Pad Labor, right? The OVA movies.
I've just seen the OVAs, yeah.
Yeah, like how they function. Like they're not just machines of war, but they're like normal everyday robots, like policeman robots essentially, and just seeing every piston, every gear move.
Yeah,
and it's believable, isn't it? Like you feel like this kind of technology can really exist in that time. And I think that's one of the main reasons why I dislike the super robot shows like Voltron, Gurren Lagann, like that, those kinds of shows.
And for people, because we haven't really brought that up yet, main difference between Real Robot and Super Robot is the real Robot is something that can feasibly exist, and they very much tell you how it exists and why it works in that universe. Whereas Super Robot shows just go,
bending.
it's logic bending. It's going above and beyond anything that you could really understand why it's there. I mean, many Super Robot shows do tell you why it works and why that exists in the realm of that particular fiction, but it's still blown heavily out of proportion. And there are a lot more. It gets a lot bigger. It gets a lot more crazy. But they can't really define exactly how.
Yeah, like one of the more bigger traits of Super Robot is that they constantly have to get bigger and bigger in terms of scale. So kind of like it's kind of like shonen mecha in a sense.
It very much is. It's sort of the shonen battle power up kind of thing put into mecha, which just makes the robot become ridiculous.
And Gurren Lagann was not the Super Robot. It essentially ripped off of a lot of its predecessors.
I wouldn't say it ripped off.
Well, I guess lovingly got a lot of inspiration, I guess.
Oh yeah, it's definitely inspired by. I mean, just if you look at anime in general, everything's inspired by something. But for me, what Gurren Lagann is it's kind of it's the sort of way of doing Super Robot that was built up through like Die Buster, sort of perfected in many regards, and sort of to the point where it's like, I just don't give a fuck right now. I'm just going to make something awesome and crazy and incredible, and that's what Gurren Lagann is. Like it is, Gurren Lagann is very much the definitive Super Robot show. It is by definition 100% what Super Robot is, whereas there are loads of shows that you can't strictly say this is Super Robot, this is Real Robot, because it sort of sits in the middle somewhere, and a lot of Gundam does that.
Well, like early mechs or Super Robot, it's just that until like the arrival of 0079 Gundam, that's when robots, or specifically the mech genre, started taking a turn towards a more realistic portrayal. But I think what's interesting about Gurren Lagann, what I found, was its existence kind of showed like a revived interest in Super Robot.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's honestly a revived interest that they haven't really done much with since.
Exactly. So it's like, I guess they could do more. It's just a matter of, can they adapt it, or can they make more of it while targeting the correct demographic in a sense.
Yeah. And another thing about Gurren Lagann that sort of steps it away from a lot of the very early Super Robot shows is that Super Robot very much went hand in hand with the classic sort of shonen fight of the week kind of deal. In that a lot of the like early Super Robot shows that sort of paved the way for what the genre would become before Gundam stepped in and went, we'll have none of that, and sort of made it straightened everything out and brought it into what it is today. But things back in the day, you'd have like hundreds upon hundreds of episodes of something where it's basically fight of the week.
Shout out to my mom for watching all of Mazinger Z in her youth.
Yeah. do you want to tell that story?
Yeah. So one day I was watching Princess Kaguya, and then my mom came into my room and she goes, preface, my mom just knows nothing about cartoons whatsoever, other than the fact that she used to watch them when she was younger, but that's pretty much it. So she came into my room, she saw me watching Princess Kaguya, and goes, that was a really good movie. I'm like, what? My mother saw an anime before I did? So she's like, yeah, it's Princess Kaguya. Like, I love the art style and such. I'm like, wow. And then we kind of got off into a conversation of like, well, we used to watch during our childhood. So when I was younger, my mom would watch with like all the Ghibli stuff, like Kiki's Delivery Service was a big one, and Howl's Moving Castle and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't until later when we delved deeper into the conversation where she revealed she saw all of the original Cutie Honey and Mazinger Z. Mazinger fucking Z.
So what this means is we're going to do a Mazinger Z podcast somewhere with your mum, right?
Starring my mother.
That'd be amazing.
Shout out to my mom.
Shout outs to Sooin's mum. Right. So I think that sort of, through various methods, has sort of described what we think mecha is, why we like mecha, why we think people should like mecha, and so now we're just going to basically tell you what to watch. Like if just bear in mind, a lot of this is sort of what we're doing here is aimed at people who have basically no experience in mecha. They may have watched a thing or two here and there, but we're sort of going to be going through some gateway shows that lots of people have already seen, and basically just give people an idea of some things they can check out to watch and sort of get their minds off of the bias against mecha. And if you're someone who is looking to get into mecha and is interested but doesn't know where to start, which is a question I've been asked so many times, this is what we're going to go for. So what do you want to bring up first, Sooin?
You know what? I think it's a good thing that a lot of people want to get into mech.
Oh, yeah.
It just shows that people are at least trying to get into it rather than being forced to, in a sense.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a case of like, I mean, I've got a reasonable subscriber base now that I'm pretty proud of. But I mean, it's only been recent. Thank you. It's only been recently, well, in the last sort of 6 months, that I've just started making stuff about mecha more than anything else. I think it was sort of after I watched Gundam Unicorn and got really back onto the Gundam train. I was like, yeah, man, mecha's my baby. I love it. And obviously mecha isn't what my entire channel is about. It's the genre that I talk about more than any other, I guess. And so I've gotten a lot of people who may not have been interested in mecha before who are now like, yeah, I kind of want to check this stuff out, but I don't know where to start.
Yeah, because I noticed some of my earlier subscribers, they previously expressed like, oh, mecha is boring. Like, why would anyone want to get into that? And it's like, and as time passed on, they're like, oh, I'm actually interested in that. Like, give me some shows to recommend. So I'm like, you know what? I like you.
Yeah.
You're doing good, kid.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So, first one I would recommend is one that I consider to be one of the most streamlined series out there in terms concerning Gundam is Double O.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are going to get pissed off at me when I say Double O is the streamlined version of Wing, because I know there are a lot of people who are very, very big sentimental attachment to Wing. But in terms of production and overall consistency, Double O is such a blast to watch. And I've had numerous experiences where people who actively don't watch mecha had a lot of fun going into it. It's relatively modern. The character designs adhere well to the current designs as well. So lots of action. So if you're not ready to get into the nitty-gritty political stuff behind it, which Double O has,
it definitely does, yeah.
But it doesn't beat you over the head constantly as much as Wing. So it's like a good intro.
Yeah, definitely. Because I mean, for me, when I look at just Gundam in general, Gundam 00 is pretty much the show that of all of them that is the most enjoyable if you've never seen any Gundam before, and that's what it was kind of made to be. And it's not a show. I don't think Gundam 00 is kind of a show to get you into Gundam because it's very different to a lot of the usual fare. But it's just a show that is just generally a very good mecha show that you don't need to have seen any other Gundam to watch, and potentially would have been more popular if it wasn't a Gundam show at all, because anything with the Gundam name to it, so many people just steer straight away from.
Universal Century.
Yeah, everyone was just looking at me like, oh, it's Gundam, I can't watch this because Gundam's so ridiculous and crazy. 00 is a show you can just watch and enjoy.
And I think one of the most relatable things as well is that it takes place in the current era, the Anno Domini period. So a lot of real world issues like fossil fuels and such do take place. So watch Gundam 00. Another one that I recommend is Metabots. No, I'm just kidding. just kidding. No, actually, no. Go watch Metabots.
Metabots is pro. Yeah. Oh, I don't think by what we were talking about, our definitions of mecha, that Metabots really makes the cut, though. But watch it anyway, because it's amazing.
Another thing I recommend is Full Metal Panic is actually my next recommendation.
Yeah.
I haven't fully finished it yet. I am getting into it slowly, episode by episode. While I admit it's not really my thing, because comedy is very subjective and it's relatively hit or miss for me. However, there's a lot to be enjoyed from it, because Full Metal Panic, like Guilty Crown in a sense, it's like an amalgamation of just everything.
Mm-hmm.
So you're bound to at least like one aspect behind it.
And the Full Metal Panic ties it together a lot better.
Yes. And watch the dub.
Yeah, Full Metal Panic is one that I was definitely going to bring up as well, because Full Metal Panic was, I'm pretty sure it was my first mecha show, and it's a show that I didn't watch because it's a mecha show. If I'm honest, I probably watched it because it was Full Metal, and I'd watched Full Metal Alchemist, and I was like, let's watch another Full Metal show. But yeah, Full Metal Panic is absolutely brilliant. I mean, this is very much a show that goes by what we were saying before. Like, you don't need to give a shit about mecha to watch Full Metal Panic at all. Like, that's not a huge draw of the series. It's got its incredible comedy elements. It's got some interesting sort of technology to get behind, and just the characters are really lovable and interesting, and it's quirky and fun. And the first season is basically a good mix of the comedy and the sort of political...
And CG.
And CG, or whatever. And then the second season, the second raid, is it amps it up. It gets a little bit more serious, a lot more story focused, builds upon many of the things that were brought up in the first season. And just as a unit, the first two seasons of Full Metal Panic, it's incredibly accessible. You can watch it no matter what you're into. If you like anything comedy, like anything kind of action-based. And then there's also another season, the spin-off, called Famofu, which is just purely the comedy side of things. And I think that's a testament to why Full Metal Panic is so good, is that there is a spin-off to it that doesn't really have robots in it at all, which is still great. And that's certainly going to be the Full Metal Panic series that Sooin would not enjoy in the slightest, because she doesn't like having fun.
I hate fun, but I like Macross Plus, so fuck you. Oh yeah, in relation to the Full Metal Panic and Full Metal Alchemist story that you brought up, that actually happened to one of my my middle school classmates. So she goes, oh yeah, I really like anime. It's like, okay, can you recommend me one? I was like, sure. Here's Full Metal Alchemist. And she forgot the Alchemist part, so she went to like the nearest chapters, which is essentially like Barnes and Nobles or like the bookstore.
Yeah.
For Canada. And she goes, is this the one? I'm like, that's Full Metal Panic. It's like, I don't care. I liked it. I'm like, good.
Excellent. Brilliant. Getting people onto mecha when you were trying to get them onto something else.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Alright, this first show I want to recommend is one that, it's perhaps not the best show out there, but it's one that I absolutely love for reasons of pure intense action, and that is Break Blade, or Broken Blade. It's a series of, I believe it's 6 films. They're like 50 minutes
6 films. There's also a TV series.
Yeah, and there is
Skip
a
the
TV
series.
Isn't it like pretty much identical?
It's pretty much the same.
Yeah. But either way, you're going to be watching pretty much the same thing. The problem with Broken Blade is it has an ending that is anime exclusive, which kind of messes things about a bit. But Broken Blade for me is a series that I enjoy predominantly for how incredible it looks and how awesome the action is. So if you're someone who just enjoys a good action series and wants an interesting action fix that is just, in my opinion, the best production IG I've ever done in terms of visuals, then Broken Blade is definitely something you're going to want to check out. It's kind of got a very sort of shonen-esque feel to it in terms of who the main character is and how he goes about his way of life. There's kind of a Naruto and Sasuke-esque...
Oh my god, they actually look similar as well.
Yeah, or
oh my god.
Akira and Atheron, if you will, basically
fuck you.
Best friends on the other side of the battlefield, that kind of thing. That it deals with well until the point where it gets to the end of the show, and that's not resolved at all because that's something for future of the manga, I guess. But it's in an interesting world where it pulls one of those amusing things where everyone can use magic except the protagonist, but because he can't use magic, he can pilot this cool robot.
Which is very old.
And it's very old, but it's very badass. Well, what do you think about Broken Blade, Sooin? Would you agree that it's something you definitely recommend to new people?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, if Akito the Exile didn't have a continuity issue with Code Geass, then I definitely recommend Break Blade over it. But someday we will have a head-to-head battle as to why Akito the Exiled is better than Break Blade.
I thought that's going to be a pure, like, why is the action better than the other one
exactly.
kind of thing, isn't it?
Exactly.
But,
and because the Break Blade action is, or at least the that the type of action that's going for is relatively similar to Akito the Exiled. We can go on a head-to-head.
All right, that'll be a fun discussion.
Oh, hell yeah.
But whilst we're on the topic of Akito the Exiled, Code Geass is one that telling people to watch it is stupid because everyone's seen it already. But it's...
Well, Ken still hasn't seen it. Shout out to him.
That's Ken, though. The only mecha show he's seen is bloody Reno Lagrange.
DDR the anime.
Yup. But yeah, Code Geass, it's silly to recommend to people because everyone's already seen it, but I think Code Geass is potentially the mecha show with the most sort of mainstream attention. It's potentially Code Geass or Gurren Lagann. Which one do you think is probably more popular?
I guess critically, Gurren Lagann is definitely more popular, I'd say. Yeah, I would personally recommend Code Geass. Like, I just think it's more fun, it's more accessible. I think the characters are better, honestly. Like, Lelouch by himself is such a fun character to follow, and he's a very captivating guy to watch.
Mm-hmm. And I think the main thing about Code Geass is that it's an original Sunrise show, being a Sunrise show that isn't Gundam. And there are quite a few of those out there. And I think what Code Geass does better than many of the other ones is its political focus gives you a good idea of what politics, what you can expect out of politics in mecha shows, because it has a huge political focus, does Code Geass. And it can also be enjoyed simply for like the sort of cool things he does with superpowers, the general action and that kind of thing. Yeah, and Code Geass, the first season specifically, you get a cool sort of dynamic of tactics in combat and that kind of thing, which the second season throws away a little bit, but that's something that you can get a lot out of in numerous mecha series. If you the concept of like tactics on the battlefield and figuring out how to win through wit as opposed to through sheer strength is something that appeals to you, because a lot of mecha shows, like going back to Broken Blade, that is very much a case here of like it's a generally a one-on-one. Yeah, it's one-on-one scenario and the stronger person wins. Whereas Code Geass, the first season, very much goes through who wins is whoever had the better tactics at the high end of the battlefield, because there are still like very powerful robots in Code Geass, and the second season goes down the road of whoever has the most powerful robot wins. It's sort of a running wings. Yeah, it's a running theme with Gundam and Sunrise in general of it's a lot of the time in some modern Gundam shows, it's a competition of who has the biggest gun. Season 1 of Code Geass is not like that. It's very interesting with what it does with its combat. And that's why if you're one of the very, very few people, there's got to be like maybe one of you in the world who hasn't seen Code Geass yet, you should check it out. If you're someone who has been put off of it because it's a mecha show, don't let that stray you, basically.
Yeah, Code Geass is one of the shows where the strategies is implemented through robots, so it's not too much of a bother that I found with a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So Code Geass, first season great, second season
I still absolutely love the second season of Code Geass, just because
second season is just sheer dumb fun.
Yeah, it's just like hilariously brilliant.
Yeah,
and I guess like the thing is like the second season of Code Geass very much brings out what original Sunrise has now become known for, in that it's hilarious plot twists that are ridiculous and do crazy silly things, and Code Geass is what kind of made that popular in their original stuff. So what I'm going to do now is transition onto the next original Sunrise show that I think is great fun for beginners, being Valve Rave. And honestly, like
there was a point that we should stop, but since we've already surpassed it, let's see how far we could go.
Like honestly, I don't like the first season of Valve Rave very much at all.
Oh, but why?
It's
why? What was it, episode 10?
No, it wasn't that. Hilarious. I think for me, the reason why I didn't like the first season of Valve Rave very much when I watched it was because it felt so cookie cut. Like, there's so much stuff in the first season of Valve Rave that just kind of... It's just like, this has happened. I have seen this happen so many times before. And when I got to the second season, I didn't really get that as much, and it was just kind of like, you get a plot twist every episode. It's hilarious, dumb fun. But the main reason why I bring up Valve Rave is because I know so many people who watch Valve Rave as one of their very first mecha shows and adored it. And sort of got into the genre because of it, basically. What's your next show?
My next one is something that you might bring up later, is Eureka 7.
Yeah, best show.
Eureka 7 is recommended for those around in the 15 to 17 to 18 age. It's definitely one of the most accessible mecha shows that I've seen in recent memory.
It's the one that got me super sold on the genre, because it's one of the earliest things I saw. I had watched a few mecha shows before it, and then after Eureka 7 became my favourite anime ever, it sort of springboarded me onto everything else. Like, for example, I think the show I watched immediately after Eureka 7 was Razafon.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's how much it did for pushing me into the genre.
I would love to recommend Razafon, but it has such a high barrier of entry that it's so difficult to get people to get into.
Yeah.
Like, the only people I feel like would like or actually watch it are like people who dislike Evangelion to an extent and want something that's, I guess, a better version of it, so to speak. Or something that, I guess, a more cerebral experience. So not really something for beginners per se.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that I wouldn't recommend Razafon as something for beginners of the mecha genre, because aside from it having a robot in it, and having robots in it generally, it doesn't do anything that mecha does, I guess, is how I would put into it. But it is, again, it's a very important picture as to how far the genre can go, and how, like the romance, for example, in Razafon is just as important, if not probably way more important than the mechas.
Well, the mech is like the vessel in some cases.
Yeah, it's a springboard.
Well,
the mech could have been a bottle of cola. And the story still would
pilot
function.
This Diet Coke. Pilot this 7-Up.
What if it was a
this
Jeep?
MLG.
What if it was a Jeep with angel wings?
But
Anyway.
yeah, Eureka 7. Well, it's not one of my favorites.
It's one of my favorites.
Yes. I think what one of the amazing things behind Eureka 7 is that it managed to maintain its innocence, so to speak. It's a very wholesome, very uplifting, very optimistic show in general. However, it's not afraid to go into some very, very dark areas.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a great introduction to the mecha genre. It's, if you're looking for something that's very fulfilling, like Razafon, but not having a mind fuck like every 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Watch Eureka 7. It's a great coming of age tale.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a shame that I didn't get to it when I was in my younger years. But I am glad that I watched it. It's just unfortunate that I wasn't able to view it earlier.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as coming of age adventures go, it's got so much going for it. And I think another thing about Eureka 7 that makes it great as a starting point to get into mecha is basically just that it is a 50-episode show. And I think another thing that will always put people off of mecha in general is that so many mecha shows are really long. And lots of sci-fi shows in general. And people get put off of that. I mean, the one we brought up Gundam 00 earlier, which is 50 episodes over both seasons. Code Geass 50 episodes over both seasons, but you've only got a single 25-episode show as sort of the starting point of it, and you can watch the second season if you want to. Whereas Eureka 7 is 50 episodes off the bat, and it continues onwards. There's no sort of break in between, anything like that. And I think, for me at least, like, Eureka 7 was so easy to watch. So I've heard many other people didn't find that at all. I've known people who have gotten bored during the early parts of Eureka 7 and dropped it or whatever, because they're silly.
Well, Eureka 7 is like a slow burner in a sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it slowly builds up, and as soon as they reach the climax, like, everything just goes uphill from there.
Yeah, which is, again, another thing that it does that sort of gets you used to what mecha is about, because lots of mecha shows do have slow starts, because a very common theme of mecha is having a really in-depth world. And because, as we mentioned before, about what we liked about mechs in general, is mechs is the robots themselves, is the detail that goes into it, and making it so they work in the world. So, for example, in Eureka 7, the mechas, they're flipping surf on the air, which sounds ridiculous, but with how they present what, because they basically surf on this thing called Trapper in the air, which reacts with various things and means that they're essentially rollerblading through the sky.
They actually attempt to explain like how it works and such.
I wouldn't even say they attempt; they do it in an incredible way. Like, they make it completely work. and the slow start is what allows that to be a thing because of how well they set the world up, and the world of Eureka 7 is one of the most compelling things about it for me.
Yeah, because I think our previous recommendations, it's all about very fast starts. Like Code Geass immediately gets into gear as soon as the first episode ends. Breakblade, it has 6 episodes. They're all movies, so they don't have enough time to really fuck around, so to speak. So
yeah,
they'll
I think the thing with them being films with Breakblade is that they have to have a climax in every film.
Exactly. So it's like a constant up and down, up and down, up and down journey. Full Metal Panic is pretty much a comedy, more than anything. It's a comedy mech, so like it constantly has to achieve a high. Where in Gundam 00, pretty much.
Well, and also with Full Metal Panic, it's because it's sort of set in our world. There's no need. They don't need to go out and develop everything because it's very much.
Applies to 00 as well.
Aside from what is it in? Are they called secrets or something? In what is it that?
No, secrets are AO.
Shit, no. A whispered. They're called whispereds.
There we go. Secrets.
What the bloody hell? I think that's. Oh, shut up.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I was saying is that aside from whispereds being a thing, which is someone who has future technology kind of like in their brain, aside from that, it's our world. So there's sort of no. They don't need to go through and develop the entire world because it's our world and you know it already. And that's the reason why this technology exists, is because of that, essentially. Okay, and so that about wraps that up, I believe, for some of those series that you can go and check out to just get yourself into things. But I think that the bigger questions that relate to Mecha, and as we mentioned earlier, are some of the reasons why people find it so hard, is that there are a few specific franchises in Mecha that have a lot to them that are quite inaccessible in many regards. So those are obviously Gundam and Macross. And Macross I want to sort of briefly tick off first, because Macross is a lot simpler than Gundam in terms of it. It's sort of It's basically one timeline with a very clear starting point. So if you're looking to get into Macross, and what I've said before, if you're looking to get into older series in general, the original Super Dimension Fortress Macross rather, is just a bloody good starting point to get you into getting your head around old shows, basically. Because it's a story that doesn't sort of faff about at the start. It sort of gets you in there real quick, as opposed to lots of other older shows that are very slow at the start and are quite hard to get invested in. And Macross is a 36 episode series rather, that just sort of tells its tale and is done with it by the end. And it's very, very good.
And I think with Gundam, it's a little bit of a different case, because there are people who just want, I guess, a taste of what Gundam is, whereas they want to thoroughly get into the franchise. So there's like the UC or Universal Century timeline and the alternate universe timelines, which consist of stuff like After Colony, Correct Century, yada yada yada. I know, Alan, we might slightly disagree on what to recommend for AU starters.
Well, I think, to be honest, there are a few different entry points to the franchise in general. And for me, there are 3 specific ways to sort of get into things. The first of which we've already kind of mentioned when bringing up 00, in that there are various shows in Gundam that you can just watch and enjoy as individual pieces. 00 is one of them. Another is Build Fighters, the 2 Build Fighters series, which is odd to recommend here because Build Fighters isn't mecha at all. It's basically a shonen sports series about Gunpla coming to life, but it's still got the Gundam name to it. And shut up, I've found numerous times recently, since Build Fighters has become, what are you laughing about?
Oh god, shout out to that one channel.
I don't get it.
Watch Mojo.
Oh, okay. Oh, we're all very, very upset about the Watch Mojo Top Gundam list for various reasons. Mainly because they put Star Build Strike on there, which isn't a mobile suit, and
they put Wing Zero. Only put the Wing Gundam footage on there.
Yep, they put the Destiny on there. Only showed footage of the Impulse.
Yes.
They put, I think, they put the God Gundam and the Devil Gundam on there. For the God Gundam, they only showed footage of the Shining Gundam, but both of those are mobile fighters, not mobile suits, so weren't eligible in the first. Anyway, we're not getting onto that. Gundam Build Fighters, right? It's good, right? And I found, because numerous people have, because it's been quite relevant, numerous people I know have watched it, and it's been their first taste of something with the Gundam name to it. And if you're literally sort of terrified of what Gundam is and just want something that says Gundam in the title, it's incredibly accessible and incredibly enjoyable. And from watching it, there are little things here and there that could make you want more, which could then get you into the rest of the franchise that way. But as it stands, it doesn't give you a good picture of what Gundam is about. And I would say in many ways, Double O doesn't give you a very good picture of what Gundam is about. And so one of my other ways of getting into Gundam that I've said to a few people that Sooin absolutely disagrees with me on is I genuinely think the best starting point to get a picture of what Gundam is like is Seed.
Kill yourself.
Because Seed, right, it's literally, what it is a retelling of Universal Century with new characters and a new setting.
Do you
it starts
want to
things
get
fresh.
them off to like an awful start?
The thing is, though, so many people I know really enjoy Seed, and Seed is what is responsible for Gundam being as it is today. It was Wing and then it was Seed, and Seed is what gave Gundam its popularity, and is why it is like it is.
Gave
because
Gundam its Bishonen look.
do you not agree with me that Seed is a far more digestible and simple mainstream take on what Gundam is?
It's a bit difficult to say because I would still say Double O is the better option, honestly.
But
Maybe
Double O
it's
is so
because-
different to what most other Gundam shows are doing, whereas I
Maybe
feel like
it's
Seed is a lot
because-
more similar.
I have like an undying hate for Cosmic Era in general.
You see, I don't like.
Yeah, Shakti, man.
I don't like Destiny at all. I know people that do like Destiny. That's fine. But Original Seed I enjoy. Original Seed I got quite a lot out of, and I think it, as I said, it's so digestible. It's so simple, and if you watch it and you're like, I fucking hate this, then don't write off Gundam, because it gets a lot better than that.
Okay, I guess I could agree with you in the sense that this is so awful. It can only go up from here. So in that case, watch Victory Gundam, then Seed. No, actually, watch Victory Gundam, then see Destiny, then Seed. Continuity does not matter. Okay, fine. In the context that things can only get better from there is fine. Seed. I think in terms of getting people into Gundam, I personally believe that showing people some of the best of what the franchise is capable of displaying, I still think Double O is the definitive choice. However, I am not against stuff like Wing, for example, because Wing is still better than Seed and Seed Destiny.
I can agree with that. Basically, the reason why I suggest Seed is just because of how accessible it is, and I think you should agree with me that Seed is accessible.
Maybe accessible back in the day.
Yeah, we're not going to find any middle ground on Seed, though, are we?
Oh God, you're giving it too much credit.
Maybe
Yes.
maybe it just comes from the fact that when I watched it, I enjoyed it, and if I rewatched it now, I wouldn't. But I still feel like I'd get a decent amount out of Seed if I rewatched it, and I will at some point. But for me, whilst that is for me what I deem to be one of the better ways to get into Gundam, just if you aren't keen on old shows, basically, like if you just want a picture of what Gundam does, I'd say go with that, or Double O, probably Double O, otherwise Sooin is going to strangle me. But for me, I would say the best way to get into Gundam, absolutely, is literally start at the beginning and watch it in order. So that doesn't even require you to watch a really old 50 episode show off the bat, because arguably the best starting point for is the compilation films of the original Mobile Suit Gundam, which tots up to about 6 hours total. They're like, or 6-7 hours, they're like 2.5 hours each, I believe the films are. And one of the biggest problems lots of people have with the original Mobile Suit Gundam is that it is very slow. There's like mech of the week kind of stuff going on. Lots of situations where they're just traveling and beat and destroying enemies as they go. But the compilation films trim it down a lot and just give you the core important story. And it is a very simple and easy to follow entry into the franchise at the start, but it still carries with it the fact that some people really aren't keen on old shows. Like some people will just watch it and be like, this is really horrible looking, I don't like this is old. And that could put them off.
I guess another factor to watch it is because of the history behind it. You get to see like pretty much where old animation started in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you get to see progress of 1979 to 2015, how far animation has developed in technology.
Yeah.
But also, if you're gonna watch the compilation movies, which I recommend, do not watch the dub of it. The dub.
There's two different dubs, isn't there? There's
so,
dubs for the compilation films and one for the original series.
Yeah. So the dub of the compilation movies came out first, and then I believe 2 years after, the dub of the TV series came out later. Now, take note that the compilation movie cast and the TV cast are entirely different. Char Aznavour was voiced by Steve Bloom, which sounds like a great combination, but in fact it is awful. I don't know how that happens. Amuro was voiced by Joe from Digimon.
What?
Yeah.
Bradswell's so good though.
And Sayla Mass was voiced by this Portuguese or Brazilian woman who had an accent, so Sayla, the whitest looking girl in the show, had a South American accent.
That's weird, man.
Take that as you will.
But yeah, taking that into account, but the big reason to start at the beginning and watch those films to get you into the franchise is that after you've watched those films, if you liked it at all, you're then on to Zeta, which is literally the next thing after, and don't watch the compilation films for Zeta. Watch the series, because Zeta is complete. There is no need to cut anything out of it, basically. And if you watch Zeta, that's it. You're in, basically. If you've watched the first 3 films in Zeta and you've enjoyed that, you're basically on track to just carry on through Universal Century and enjoy everything. By starting at the beginning, you're cutting out the sort of horror and daunting aspects of, oh god, what do I watch? Because you're starting the beginning, and there's only one show next each time.
You can do what I did by getting into Gundam, which I wholeheartedly recommend. Just kidding. Start with Turn A.
You didn't start with Turn A. You'd watched like 00 and stuff long before that.
No. Turn A was actually my first.
Was it?
Yeah. It was about a decade ago, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. It was.
You rewatched it recently then?
Yeah, like I rewatched some episodes recently, but I need a full rewatch of that. So first Gundam for me started from Turn A, Wing, Seed Destiny, 00, Age, Unicorn, I believe. Then was it Stargazer? Was it Stargazer? The Cosmic Era one.
Yeah, the little OVA.
Yes. I'm probably missing something on in between. Compilation movies of Mobile Suit Gundam, then the TV series, then War in the Pocket before that as well. So do what I did, go all over the charts. You are going to be thoroughly fucked.
It seems to work fine for Sooin. Oh yeah, for anyone interested, just literally go on the Gundam page on Wikipedia and it shows you everything in release order. But yeah, literally what I did is like 00 was airing at the time, and I was like, Gunplar's really cool, wow. And I just literally started from the beginning. It took me a while to get through it, but that's honestly the best way to do it, because that way you watch everything. And whilst there are some shows that many people don't like and that I don't like mixed in there as well, you still get a lot out of the journey. So like you got the compilation films, which are amazing. You've got Zeta, which is amazing. Immediately following that, you've got Double Zeta, which is very controversial, because the start of the show completely takes away what Zeta had built up and sort of makes the tone uber silly and strange. And like the start of Zeta is start of Double Zeta, is so hard to get through for some people, and it was so hard for me to get through. But the second half of that show is great. And then shortly after that, you get onto Victory, which, as I've said, is one of my least favourite Gundam shows, but lots of people do like it, so I'd still say watch it. But either way, I think that is about all we can say about that. We've rambled on a lot. I think about half of this podcast was us talking about getting into Gundam.
Oh, jeez.
But I think that...
We like Gundam.
Yeah, I think that should probably give a good picture to a lot of you on sort of what to latch onto, what to pick up, and what to do in terms of getting into Mecha. I am definitely planning to do a sort of full intensive video somewhere detailing Gundam properly and how to get into it and how to do everything, including like how to legally watch everything, because lots of stuff has been relicensed recently, which makes it a lot easier to actually get into things. There's lots of places to actually watch stuff online as well, legally, which is cool.
Gundam info is really bipolar, though.
Yeah, very much so, because lots of their stuff is just not available in a lot of countries. Though I believe Unicorn has recently been made watchable, where I am at least. So
it
probably is in
really
America
depends.
as well.
Like 1 month, like nothing will be available. Then the next day, like Unicorn and Age will be available. Then
Yeah.
the next day, Zeta is gonna be there. Then a month after that, Age is gonna be.
Either
like,
way,
gonna
go on
get
the
taken
Gundam Info
down.
YouTube channel, and there's quite a few things on there to check out. Like Build Fighters is definitely on there. I'm pretty sure 00 is currently on there, even though it's on like 240p or something dumb. And if there are if you are looking for any other shows to check out, if perhaps you've seen everything that we've already discussed today, if you haven't yet, listen to episode 00 of our podcast, because we went through each of our top 5 favourite mecha shows in that one, and you can just get a good idea of what we personally deem to be like the best the genre has to offer, like the stuff that's kept us into it for the longest, basically. And I think that probably about wraps us up, doesn't it?
Yep.
So I have been BakaShift. This is my channel. You can follow me on Twitter at BakaShift. I've been joined by my wonderful co-host, who you can subscribe to at the link in the description, and follow on Twitter at SICnanigans. How'd you feel, Sooin?
Metabots is still a great mecha.
Yeah, and so Zoids, which we didn't mention. You should watch Zoids.
Yeah, man.
Yep. And with that, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next time, where we will be talking about mecha.
Again. But
God.
I don't like mecha.
Oh, you guys should make this a freaking sports anime podcast. Oh god, we should.
Why make a podcast about sports anime when you can go out and play sports?
Why make a podcast about mecha when you can go out and build robots? Robot Wars is way better than all this Gundam shit.
Why make a mecha podcast when you can just join the army?